Hello there. Welcome to the Alpha Anywhere Q&A. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am your host, your presenter, and the answer of questions today. Just a quick check. Can you hear me? Because I don't have anyone else to verify what's going on. Yes, perfect. And then with regards to sharing, can you see my mouse? Let me see. Do you see that? If I click on this, does it move? Did that slide transition for you? All right. Yeses all around. Thank you so much. All right, we did it. We can do this. All right, thanks again for verifying that. Again, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Alpha Software today, or not just today, just generally. And today, we're going to talk about Alpha Anywhere and continue a conversation that we started 2 weeks ago. I hope you get something out of it. It's a little advanced, but we'll get into that. First, as a reminder, webinar schedule, August 17th, next week, GraphQL. If you want to know more about GraphQL, if you don't know anything about GraphQL, if you'd like to learn something new, please join us. We will be doing an introduction to GraphQL and some of the basic stuff. That will be done by Dion McCormick. And then as a follow-up to that, on the 31st, there will be an advanced GraphQL webinar to continue on that conversation and get into some more advanced things that you can do with that framework. And then as a reminder, on the 24th, we will be having Lee Visick on for a customer presentation. He's going to talk about using view boxes with visual data. I strongly encourage everyone to join us for that as well. Lee is a great developer. He's built a lot of really, really cool things. I've always been impressed with what he does. So please join us for that. Tell your friends and family, I suppose, to join us that day. So maybe they can learn something new too. And then we're into September. And September is really the last month before DevCon, which is in October. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, please do so. Again, that link is there, DevCon 2022 off of our website. I hope to see you there. It should be exciting. We'll be talking about all things data. And then getting back to what we were talking about, building custom web themes. Today's presentation is going to be a bit short because we're just going to go straight into the demo part and take a look at a custom web theme. And some things that I want to hit on today. Again, reminding you, how do you expose variables on the Adjust tab so that you can adjust them yourself. We can look at customizing a checkbox and radio buttons and how you can save those customizations, and you'll understand when we get to that. We're also going to look at some important things to know about drop-down boxes when you're working with them, especially if you're building out a style for them, and the importance of specifying a background color for various things. And I'm just looking up my notes here. There they are. And then throughout this presentation, if you have a question about anything, go ahead and put it in the questions box of the GoToWebinar panel. It doesn't have to be specific to what we are talking about. It can be something else that you have a question about, especially if you're new and you want to learn something. Anything, you can go ahead and ask anything about Alpha Anywhere. So we will go here. Where is Alpha Anywhere? So if you're not familiar with it, this is the universal installer. And I've got Alpha Anywhere. There we go. There it is. And hold on a minute. My assistant is trying to get in on the action here. So last time we talked about starting with a web theme, building from scratch, something totally blank. And we did make a blank theme at that time. And we talked a little bit about what the general was, how you could set up the icon set here. And also, looked at how do you create like a button theme, starting from scratch, and where you need to assign all those values in for like class names and what gets defined down here, as well as on the Adjust tab exposing variables, SAS variables, so that you could do something like change the whole look of your theme in one place without having to go back through and find replacing some color code or font if that's what you want to expose, or spacing, border sizes, types, anything can be put into a Sass variable really. And I strongly encourage you to learn how to use them. If not to expose them on the Adjust tab, but mostly so that you can save yourself some of that time and effort when trying to hone in on what you really want in terms of colors and stuff if you're designing something. So this was that blank theme that we kind of worked through. This might be a little bit different than what we actually presented. But what I worked on in the interim, and even before that last presentation, was something I've been calling Scratch. It's a custom web theme built from scratch, from the ground up. It started with nothing, which is literally what you get when you create a new web theme, a new blank one. You have nothing in it. You don't have any parts. You don't have any variables. You just have an empty canvas. And so I've put together this, and to give you an idea of what it looks like, we'll go over here to live preview. This component uses it. And I apologize. My cat keeps jumping on top of my computer. So this is what it looks like. Up here, we've got some buttons in a control bar and a panel header. This is a list here. It's got a header. It's got a footer. I've sorted the data. These are group headings. This has been set in the theme. When you select something, it shows up green when you've clicked on it. The fonts, I've loaded a custom web font. And then, here's our labels. Here's a button. It shows a pop-up. A text box. When you click on stuff, you'll notice that it gets this little blue border. And then also here, what is today? It's Wednesday, but it's got some validation on it. So if you pick the wrong one, it shows a little arrow icon, highlights it in red, and gives you a reason of why that's wrong. And then finally, some custom radio buttons and checkboxes that use SVG graphics instead of the system default for the icons for the checkbox and the radio button. And that's actually done in the design of the UX itself. Is not done in the web theme. But I wanted to just take a look at a few of those things, and just to verify here, this is using Scratch. Scratch is there. Excuse me. So if we come back over to Scratch, just take a look at what's in here. So I've gone in here and I've defined a few parts, and it's only the parts I needed to get this Scratch UX to look how I want it to look. So I've got a general. Actually went through, and on general, I basically defined everything that was there because some of this stuff, like these icons here, are used elsewhere throughout the entire UX component, or then the grid component. They're sprinkled in places. And then some of the other things, just to have them in here in case I needed them, because I wasn't 100% sure when I first started putting this together what exactly I would need. But the general part is pretty small, so defining that doesn't take too much effort. The bulk of the work is going to be getting your icons into the theme and then assigning all the icons into the various properties that are available to you. So I've got a heading. This is some text. I've defined a highlight. I don't actually end up using highlight. I've defined a link. Link doesn't get used either. Group label and group body. This is just the HTML field set, form field, with the line around it. I don't actually use this anywhere, but I went ahead and put this together just sort of get started to get an idea of what we wanted. And then from there, I knew that I was going to work with a UX. So here I created a UX base, but the only thing I defined in it is text. I didn't define any of the repeating column or repeating section properties because I'm not going to use a repeating section, but that's what this preview here is. These are repeating section boxes. But I set up the label. On the panel card, I went ahead and made a header and a footer, and then just like a general definition that gives it a border all the way around. And then I took that those classes that I defined in the base, and I just put them in the navigator and the layout because I was unsure if I was going to need either one. But if you don't specify them, if you add something like a header into a panel navigator or panel layout, it's going to show up with nothing in it. It's not going to pull from the panel card base, which is the main reason why I did it, is because I knew I was going to put a header and a footer in. So did that here on the layout as well. Didn't do anything with docked panels or any of this stuff here. I left that empty. I did to specify a window. That pop-up window uses something in here for the, if we'll go back here, look at Scratch real quick. This button, when you click it, it shows a little pop-up message. And it actually uses the window class for that white box around it. That's what it pulls if you go with the default setting in the system. And it took me a minute to figure that out. But Alpha Anywhere gave me a helpful error message to figure out that I needed to do that for this transient message when I showed it. So that's why this is here. I did go as far as like specifying the close button and put the footer in there, and then defined the buttons here. These buttons are identical to the other buttons in the theme. Here is list box. I set up the columns. I set up what happens when you selected a hover and a normal row of data. Set up the header, set up the footer, set up an item group title. So if you group your list data by like country or customer name, there's an option to put like a group heading before each section of data. And that's what this item group title is. You'll note that it's set up to do small caps and it's centered. After doing this and looking at it, I may not like that. So I might take away the centering, but that's what I did here. I also set up list disabled. But everything else in here, these two boxes here, the view with group nav, and these things here, which are scrollers for the list, I did not set those up because I wasn't going to use them. And I did nothing with this main sub content, context, and detail. I do want to take a minute to point out what this is in the list. And let's make a new list control here so that we're not messing up Scratch. So I'll make a blank UX, and then we'll just add in a list. Okay. And then let's give it some static data. Just go with the first names and addresses in here, click OK. We'll come over to list properties and we'll make this a free form layout. So in the layout properties, layout type, defaults to column, but we have something called freeform, which lets you create a layout using client-side templating, HTML, and CSS, and to a degree JavaScript to customize how each record in that list is going to appear. And so when you come to the list layout tab, you're presented with this. This is a HTML editor with some extended functionality in it, such as support for the client-side templating syntax and placeholders over here. But if you come down here, there's this thing called Predefined Templates. And if you open this up, that main sub detail, context, and content, that refers to these placeholders here in these templates. So we cancel out of that and go back here. That main sub content, content detail, and even that arrow. The classes you define here in the theme are what get used in those templates. So if you are interested in that, in using those, it may be a very good idea for you to set up the styling for that in your web theme as you're designing it. If you're not going to use those, you can skip them, which I did. Item icons here is part of list box, and I added those because I wasn't sure where, if I was going to need them. And then beyond that, I set up edit, and I set up button. Edit covers text boxes, text areas, and drop-down boxes, and then button covers buttons. So that's what's in here. So if we come over to the code tab, it's going to have window open right now. We can just start at the top and just take a quick look at everything that I did. So, and I apologize in advance. I am not a designer. I can do things with CSS, but it's really like sort of like a hack it in kind of thing. And if it works, it works, and I walk away from it. So this is probably not going to be. I guarantee you, this isn't going to be very well designed in terms of the layout what I've got down here in this code section, and some of my variable names may not make any sense, but it's working and it does what I want it to do. So when you're building these up, you're going to work here in the map and you're going to work with parts. And parts that are gray are not defined, and parts that are black have at least one sub-theme for them. And then general is always defined. You always have a general. And general just is some basic stuff, like what is the class applied to a page? The page being the A5W page that a control is embedded on. So if we come over here and just do a live test here, and I pick Scratch, which is the A5W page I created. Oh, let's not clear it out. Incremental publish for that component we were looking at. And we wait for it to publish. I'm using live test. I like live test a lot. Let's pull this out here. And there's two ways we can look at this. I'm going to show you both. Look at this one here. So page is class equals page. Page is applied to the body tag of the generated HTML output. So that's what this is here. If I hadn't defined anything, there would be no class added to the body. And in terms of what page does, here, it just sets the background color to this variable here that I defined, and the foreground, or the color of all the text to foreground color, which is a shade of dark gray. And then it also defines the font family. And these variables are defined up here. Here's my font family, and here's my background and my foreground. And right here at the very, very top, you'll see something importing Open Sans. Font family Open Sans. Open Sans is right here. It's a web font. It's the one used by this web theme. But if it, for some reason, can't load, it isn't available, there is an entire font stack here going down the line of all the other options that could potentially be used. This font stack I did not create myself. I actually went off and I found a boot swatch template that I liked. So I went off and I found Yeti. Minimize that for a bit. So this is what Yeti is, and I took elements out of this that I liked and made a theme for it. And I did that using the Chrome tools here, the inspector tools, to kind of dig into each one of these elements to figure out, what was the padding on something or what was the color that it was using, and then built off of that. If you have someone you can work with, like a web designer or someone that you can give access to Alpha Anywhere to design your theme, and they can do that just with Community Edition, which is free. You can use like, this is the theme I need to build. Here's the tooling that I have to work with, get it in here. But I only need X, Y, and Z. And then you can maybe give them a UX component that they can test with to see how things work out. I don't know where I was going with that thought. I'm talking about it too long. Anyway, I think what I was getting at is, if you have someone you can work with, it's probably better to go with these tools here. So start with whatever mockups they do for you and where design work that they do in static, and then figure out how to map that into what's here in terms of your classes and your icons and all that good stuff. If you don't have someone you can work with, you can certainly go to a place. There's a lot of websites out there where you can hire someone to design something for you, or you can go out and figure out something like a boot swatch template, or there's a whole bunch of websites out there that have inspiring themes that you can pull from, and then just take what you like out of that, either by inspecting it or downloading the CSS and figuring it out for yourself, and then building up what you need in here. We don't have any tools that import like a Bootstrap theme into an Alpha Anywhere theme. It's something that Dion always brings up whenever this topic is discussed, but that doesn't exist right now. So we do support Sass, so that gives you these variables that you can work with. And this interface itself, in terms of building it up, these are just class names. As you add them, this will update for you to show you what you're going to get. And so I just went through and I built out page, I built out heading, I built text, which is just text anywhere there's text. So you put text in a p tag in a view box or freeform layout somewhere, it's going to pull from this. Highlight color, if that gets applied to anything, there are some features in Alpha Anywhere to apply highlighting if you search for something in like a list or something like that. Your link colors, everywhere there's a link. What happens when you hover on the link? You can't tell, it does change color. It's just a very pale shade of blue that doesn't or not pale, it's darker. I don't think that's going to come through on the video here, but it does change. And then group and group label, playing with, what kind of borders do we like here. And then finally, the big one was icon. And let's see here. We go into icon set. This is where you set up the icon class information. So your default class name applied to icons, and then the one that's applied whenever something gets disabled, which Alpha Anywhere does for you. It will add this class to an icon to disable it if you disable that image or button. But that's set in here inside the icon set. Your icon sets can be SVG. They can also be an image, so a bunch of image files, like a bunch of PNGs, or a CSS font, icon font. And the icons I'm using in here are not the alpha theme icons. So let's go look at those. There's a lot of icon sets out there. Some of them are free, and I used a free one. So we come here to Scratch. In here, it's just the icons folder. These are all the icons I have. And I got these from Ionic. Ionic has a whole icon library up for MIT, licensed under MIT, so you can use it in your own apps, commercial or personal use. They have a whole bunch. And I put them in this folder, and they all have the pattern of like filename.svg. So if we come back and look at Scratch inside this icon set definition again, you'll see this icon slash, and then there's a star here, and then .svg. That's the pattern to match. So any file that meets that pattern basically is an SVG file in the icons folder, stored in the icons folder being in the same directory as this themes file that we're working with. Those will all be loaded in and made available. The prefix, I use Scratch dash to indicate that they are from the Scratch theme. You don't have to do this, it's optional, but it can make it a bit easier to find things because in addition to all the icons here, let's select one here, loaded for the theme, which are these guys here, you also have access to all of the system icons down here. And these are the ones using the alpha theme. But here is Scratch. So if we just type in Scratch, that's basically going to eliminate all of the system icons from this picker. And there are three versions of each one of these symbols because they are offered in like an outline, regular, and then what's the term? Sharp. So if we look at sharp, we can make these a bit bigger so you can really, there we go. This is sharp. If we look at outline, they're outline, see how they're more rounded? So the default one and the outline ones are rounded, and the sharp ones are sharp. They have crisper corners here on all these icons. So these are different types to choose from. I looked at a lot of icon sets out there. There's a lot of them you can find. You just search for an icon set. If you don't find a free one that you like, there are a lot more out there that you can also purchase, and the prices are not that bad. So look into that. Using your own icons in your app, even if you don't, you could go with the basic alpha theme. Like if you don't want to go as far as building a whole custom theme, but you do want to change up the icons, one thing you can do is take that alpha theme, none of those system themes, pick the one you like the most, copy it locally, and then just replace all the icons in it, and then you're done. And it's a lot of work to get that set up, but once you've set it up, you're done. So because there's a lot of icons to define in here, in addition to general, the UX has a few. I did not specify them. I think it has a few. No, it has none. But UX is where I defined label, and the label is applied to all of the labels in the UX component, and it's simply the text is the foreground color, and then I added a font size and some padding, and I changed the font weight to be 300, which is slightly lighter than the default. We'll look at panel card, but panel card and panel navigator and panel header or panel layout are basically all the same. I specified the class name, the header class, and the footer class. And we'll look for a panel here. I'll add a new line. And here's panel card has a border. The panel header has a background and some padding, and the font color is a bit different, and the font weight's different. We'll skip over this part right here. And then the footer has the different font weight and a footer color. Now this thing in the middle, excuse me, inside a panel header. So this construct here. Sass lets you do something called nesting. And what nesting lets you do is then do something like lets you easy to define rules such as when I place a button in this header, I want it to have a very specific style, a very specific look, but only when it's inside the header, or only when it's inside anything that has the panel header class. So this lets you very easily say, like, if we're working with the panel header, so something has this panel header class, which is this header part up here, and I have something in here that uses button or button hover and button pressed or button disabled or is an icon, I want it to use these rules instead of whatever the defaults are for those classes. And if we go look at button next, button base, this is button base. This is what it looks like. When you click on it, or just the default, when you hover over it, it turns dark. When you press it, it gets this nice little blue line around it. When it's disabled, it's paler. You'll also note that the mouse cursor doesn't change when you move over it. If you look over these ones, see how it turns into a hand, but when you move over this one, it doesn't do that. And that's all done through the button definitions here that I set up. We'll go look at those. So there's button, button hover, button pressed, disabled, transition. This is just animation rules. So when you click on that, you see how that border fades into view as opposed to suddenly being there. That's what that is. But that's button. But when it's in a header, I wanted it to look different. And you'll notice here, looking at button, this is just showing you button base. And if you look at panel card, there's no buttons in here to like visualize what you're doing. But there is a feature that is available to you here, which is called wrapper class. And since the header is simply defined with a class called panel header, you could take advantage of that here. And when you're looking at button base going, what does this look like if I've put it in a panel header? I would like to visualize that and work on that design. So if you add your panel header class name, and that's auto completing because I already did this once and it remembers what I did. If we apply that, now it's showing us the panel header with the buttons inside of it. And so that's what it's going to look like if we come back up here to our panel, or maybe it's down. Yeah, right here. If we come down here to panel header, this right here, this definition here is what you're seeing here. And when you don't want that anymore, you simply come up here and delete that and click OK, and we'll take you back to what you're going to see by default. Similarly, you could do panel footer. So we'll see here, that's the footer background, and you notice they didn't change. There's no extra rules for panel footer in this theme. So that something to keep in mind, wrapper class, to visualize things. So we're looking at panel. Panel card. Panel navigator has it has a few extra things. It has something called an indicator in it. You can click on these and it describes to you what it is. So the indicator is the dots that appear at the bottom. So it's like a visual indicator of what panel you're on as you're using a carousel mode. I don't use that in my app, so I didn't bother adding it. And then layout has a whole bunch of stuff too, like docked panels could look different from your regular content, which you might want, as well as like left and right, top and bottom stuff here. Just as a note, this is using a panel layout, which is why I added it, because I put a panel header in it. See, we looked at button. We can, oops, I did not want to do that. Now I have a button group. Okay, we can look at edit. So edit has quite a bit in it, actually. On the surface, it looks like 3 classes, but I had to do quite a bit of work to get like this icon to show up and not be placed on top of that drop-down arrow. So we'll go edit. So the edit itself, when you click on it, it adds a little animated border with a blue color to indicate that you are, that's active. It does something similar for the air state, but it's a different color. It has a watermark. The watermark is a pale color here. And then it also does highlighting when you're mousing over the elements in the dropdown. But just as a note, and it's just something I discovered while I was working with this, the color is not going to show up here because this is using an embedded version of Google Chrome. And for some reason, when you give option hover attribute, which option is the HTML tag used for each one of these items in a drop-down menu, it's ignored. And Chrome always gives you this blue color. But if we look at it in, is it IE Edge? I'll show you what I mean. So this is edit. When the edit gets focused, this is the thing that does the that color application here. This is edit air, which we assign here, but here it's got a background image in it, and then using the position and some size information for the background. That's the little air icon that's showing up. So this URL thing is just a base64 encoded SVG image, which is the icon you see there. And then everything else, the color, which comes from this air border color variable. And the rest of this stuff is just positioning that icon. As an added bonus, if we're working with a select control, which is a drop-down control, the air icon needed to be moved in a bit more from the right so it wasn't overlapping this drop-down arrow. So that's what this is here. A note on this drop-down arrow, this is coming from the browser itself. If you don't want to use it, there are ways to replace it, but within the theme itself, there's nowhere where you can change that icon. Option hover is supposed to display the background color for that item is gray, which is watermark color. It's supposed to be the same color as the watermark, but because this is Chrome, it's ignoring that. This is the focus, the border color, changing it to red instead of that blue color. And then the watermark is simply saying the watermark text will have a color of this value and opacity 1. That's just how transparent it is. 1 means it's not transparent at all. 0 means fully transparent. This is what we have set up for edit here, and that covers all three of these things, which is actually quite a few controls in an application. It's 3 different control types, and it covers a wide range of functionality. We didn't define button group, but I did accidentally click on it. We'll take a quick look at window before going to list, because list has a lot of different stuff in it. So window I added at the last minute here, to be honest, because I wanted to use that pop-up transient window message, but if you don't define a window base class, it doesn't work. It needs to have this definition in it so you can use that feature. And the reason it needs that definition is because it's pulling this class name out of there, this window class name, which simply defines a background color and a border. So I wanted to point out here, it should always define a background color. If you don't do this, but you just add a border, it might look in the preview that your window is going to have a white background, but it doesn't. It's transparent. So you always want to define a background color for parts in your theme that could be overlaid on top of something else. And window is a very good example of that. Windows appear on top of your app, and if you do not give them a background color, you're going to see all the text behind it and be scratching your head like, why did that happen? So that's really the main reason for wanting to do this. Adding the border itself is just a nice way to define the space because it's white. I didn't make it a different color from the default background, so that's why that's there. The rest of this, the title bar, the footer, literally took what I'd done with the panel header and footer and just copied it into these two classes. I also overrode the icon so that it would appear white. It doesn't do anything special here. I just have a single tool close image defined. There are options for image hover and image pressed. If you don't define them, it's just going to use that icon. You can add these to create the effect of like the color changing when the mouse is hovering over it, or when you press it, maybe you change the icon itself to kind of give more visual feedback. But that's really up to you if you want to do that. Button defaults for the window are defined in the window. So this is one of those rare places where you can specify the buttons that would appear inside of something within the part. And then the rest of this is just the system defaults. So pointer size 10, I'm not going to use pointers, but pointer is that little icon that points towards the control that opened it. If you want it to point towards the control that opens a window, it's one of the settings you can set in the action JavaScript for opening a window. So that's window. And then finally list. And list has a lot in it, but it also doesn't have that much in it. So let's go back up here and find list. Again, not organized. Slightly organized, but not really. So the list, I just started defining the colors for things when I got to list, like in the section where I was working with the CSS, because for me that was easier to work with to figure it out. But here, there's quite a few classes that got defined. So there's the general class that's applied to the list, the outside of the object basically, and I give it a border. Focus, I told it was list focus. I don't actually think I defined a list focus. Oh, I do. Oh, okay. So when the list has focus, the border of the list changes to blue. If the list is set to fill the container, you will not see the border. Just a heads up. But if you look here, this border is blue. This is the focus, list focus and parts. That's where that blue color is. Here it's gray. Disabled, on list disabled, I made everything gray. In fact, where did I put it? Here it is. So in list disabled, I say the text is this disabled line color and the border color is the disabled line color. And then I just went through all the items border colors are this color, the background is white, and the color is disabled for the, if you hover selected or if you hover over one of the header items, just the whole thing is just going to stay that color. That's all this is doing. Same with icons that show up in here that use the icon class. That's what disabled does. It just basically makes it look like you can't do anything with it, even though that when you like mouse over it, it is applying those class names like hover and selected. So something to keep in mind. If we didn't have these, so if we take this out, I'll just comment it out. This is going to break temporarily. So if we take that out, you'll see item and selected still show up here because it's pulling those class names from where I set them. So by adding that in, that goes away. Because if the list is disabled, you probably can't do anything with it anyway. So that's the disabled. The header is this blue thing here, and that's the fixed header as opposed to a data header. And again, it's that same thing that we saw with the panel layout. And the window is just header background, header foreground, these two colors, the font, some padding, and the font size. Same with the footer. I think I put footer down here at the bottom. So there's your footer definition. Some more interesting things in here, I think, are this item group title, which is called title class name. And it's the help says list title items, but it's really those group headers when you group your data by some field in the list. And this one I said to do small caps and did some weird stuff with the font and stuff like that. So the rest of this, list item hover, and list item selected, that's the data rows. There's not much to show with those. I gave them a border, and change the background color if you hover on it or it's selected. And then in terms of the column headings up here, so we have this guy. This is the call header item. It's the item in the column, like the content itself. And that, I think if we hover on it, I think hover and selected do different things. List item, hover, class name. Oh, I accidentally took it out. There we go. All right, that makes more sense to me now. Okay, so hover. If you're hovering over it, it changes gray and turns white. If you're not hovering over it, it's just that dark gray color. And this overrides those icons again, using that SAS syntax. That's very convenient. Oop, I don't want you to do that. There we go. And also here, call header item, the override on the icon here is simply just putting some more space between it and the text. And then also just of note, sorting icons are defined here. And then there, you can't see it because it scrolls off screen, but there's something called item parts, part navigate. That's defined down here. They don't have to be arrows, they can be whatever you want. This is what I chose to put in here. So that's the definition. And that's everything I did here. I did do one more thing. It was with the radio button, the checkbox. So by comparison, let's just add a radio button here. We'll call it radio button 2. And put the same choices in it. I've just been working with weekdays here. And remove that break so that they appear side by side, and we'll go look at the live preview. So by default, your icons are going to look like this. And these are the browser icons. And there are ways to override it with CSS, but something that Elf Anywhere has that we added in more recent release is the ability to convert this to a JavaScript control, which then allows you to use SVG icons or HTML text or really anything to represent the control that displays what is selected. So The same with the checkbox. So these are actually JavaScript controls. So we'll just go look at one of them. But to do that, you check this JavaScript controls option, which exposes settings. And when you come in here, there's a section for customizing the marker. And this is set to do style, and I configured the on and the off here to use, click here. This is icon radio, button circle. Let's go back in here actually. So I think, let's back it up a minute. So we did radio button on. So we'll type radio. So that's the on state here. I'm going to cancel because I don't want to change that. And then the off state is just radio button off. And that's off here. The coloring itself was actually done with a CSS class called icon radio, which is specified in, let's see if I can control this and get a notepad here. Just making the font larger than 6 so you can see it. All right. So when you're defining SVG icons and these properties here, they use this syntax where it's like SVG icon equals, and then there's a hashtag, and then this is the name of the icon, and this indicates that it's from the theme. So it's one of the icons from the theme, and then there's a colon, and then after the colon, you can do things like specify a class name applied to it. There's additional syntax for specifying the size of the icon and or inline styling. But icon radio is the one that I created that has that blue color. And I put that in the Scratch theme. And that's down here at the end of the theme, right here. So icon, radio button and checkbox icon overrides. So if I have an icon radio or icon check, the stroke and the filler is primary color, which is blue. The width and the height are 1 rem. And then it's vertical and middle, and it has padding right 0.5 rem. And rem is a CSS measurement. There's a whole bunch out there. I stuck with rem in here because that's what the theme was using on Bootswatch. But that does all of the coloring for me, including adding that padding between the icon itself and the text shown for the option. There is one more thing that I did here, and it was to override the air text color and give it some padding. And the air text is that text that shows up here on our drop-down box where we picked today. What is today? It's Wednesday, but if we pick any other day, it shows us an error. So pick Monday. So this is that text, and that text you're not going to find in the theme, but it is added dynamically, and I figured out what that was by opening the Chrome debugger, which is this link down here, and then I grabbed this box here, and I moused over that guy, and I clicked on it, and then I clicked on this again to bring the Chrome debugger back to the foreground, and just took a look at that text, and it has a class called airText, and this is the default implementation for airText. Its color is red, its font size is 8 point. If you don't like that, you can overwrite it, and that's what I did. I gave it that air color, which is the same color as this icon here in this layout, and the border. And then I gave it a little more padding because when this is selected, this this border was showing up over top. So if we remove that, see it bumps right up against the control, and then we like pick up Sunday. So now that's kind of overlapping it. It wasn't very readable. So that's the reason for adding that padding top to that class. And then again, there's our hello button with the background color defined. And so at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. I hope you got something out of this. It's kind of hard to teach you guys how to build your own custom web themes because the majority of that is you figuring out your brand, what you want things to look like, and then breaking that down into the stuff you actually need in your application before adding it. But it's really just the work of going in here and figuring out the parts that you're using, assigning the class names to the parts that do what you want, and then putting that definition here in this code section. I did want to very briefly remind you all again how you can expose a variable here on adjust. And we'll expose background and foreground. And I'm going to do that by using add variable here. And I'm just going to recreate these. So we kill background, and the value is FFF, available on the adjust tab. Call it colors. Title is background color. The type is color, and main background color for app. So we'll do background, and we'll also add foreground. It's going to remember the stuff you put in here last. Just as an FYI, it's 222. It's available on the adjust tab. It's a foreground color. It's a color, and this is a default text color for app. Okay, and then I'm going to take out these two lines and save it. So now if we come over to adjust, there's my background and my foreground. If I decided, you know, I don't want that, I want this to be 222, and then this to be white, I can just swap that real quick. And now my whole app is updated because I've used those variables everywhere. There are places where it probably isn't going to work. Like, for example, the footer was drawing from that foreground color for the footer text in the panel navigator. So this indicates to me, myself, that I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have put that in a different variable to better handle this. But you know, that's how easy it is if you're using Sass variables to just very quickly make a new or make a few tweaks or even like a variation on your theme. I'm gonna change these back. So yes, questions. I'm gonna look at the questions now. Type them in the questions box to go to webinar control panel if you haven't done so yet. Someone asked, they're using the advanced list search control. How can you change the style on that one? That is a very good question. Let's go take a look at the advanced list search. So this is advanced list search. It just has control properties where you can configure things up, but you'll see that there's not much here you can do. This is going to start venturing into the realm of some really advanced stuff. But if we come down here to more controls, advanced list search is actually a more control type. So if you don't like how it looks, you have two options. One is you can preview it and open up the Chrome debugger. I'm getting ahead of myself here. And if I had implemented anything for it, come in here and just look at the class names that are defined in it. So it's got query builder, it's got query builder list. So that's one way you could work with this. But more controls are just a custom control, and they are stored in your installation folder. So let's go to D, and let's see here. We have Alpha Anywhere installs. This is where I put my stuff. It's not in the default. We'll go nightly. So pretend we're in x86 program files alpha anywhere folder, where you've installed alpha anywhere. And you didn't rename it CE Nightly, you left with the system default, so it says alpha anywhere up here. If you come in here, there's a folder. Trying to remember what we called it. Edit UX custom controls. So if you go into the UX custom controls folder, these are all those custom controls, including the advanced list search. And so alternatively, if you don't want to sit there and dig through the Chrome debugger to figure out what everything is in here, you can open up these files and figure out which one contains the HTML and CSS for that control, which is not that one. I think it might be this one. There we go. Oh, I'll just drag the whole thing over. So let's see, I don't want define, I just want generate. So this is the XBasic definition for that control that contains everything that you need to build it. This is a bunch of JavaScript here. But if you go through here, you should be able to find something somewhere that looks like HTML. In fact, let's just search for class equals. Here we go. So layout definition, class equals query builder list. It's using the UX based label class here. This is a placeholder. So one of the things you can modify for this would be the label class for the UX part. And as a reminder, that part over here in code is this. This is label right here. So whatever classes are listed in here are what will be loaded in there. Where am I? It's also using edit, which makes sense because it shows text boxes and drop downs in there. It uses edit a lot. It also uses icon, and it's just icon here. So you're gonna have to define icon if you don't have icon to customize those icon classes in there. So that's what's being used in there. I mean, you can look around a bit more. It's using list box base, so list control variables in here, and so on and so forth. But that's an alternative thing that you can do if you want to customize these controls. I would argue that's some advanced, super advanced stuff going in there and playing around with these files, but you're welcome to do so if you want to learn more about it. And you have access to everything that's in that more controls here. And as a reminder, we did a presentation a few weeks ago, possibly a month ago, about how to create your own custom control like these ones using the ViewBox. So definitely go check that out if you are interested. It's on our YouTube channel. So I hope that that's helpful information. Let's see here. I think not a lot of questions today, so I must have answered everyone's questions. There is a ViewBox control question in here. Can a dropdown be used in a ViewBox? Yes. ViewBox is just, let's see here. It's a data control. Oops, I'm clicking all over the place. There it is, ViewBox. Let's give it some data, just because it's a little bit easier to work with some data with a ViewBox. Give it names. So can use this would be on the layout. Can you put a drop down in here? Yeah. These controls may not be one of the supported options here. But for sure, if you go over to Freeform Editor, this will take any HTML that you want to put into it. It's one of the strengths of the ViewBox is that it can be anything you want, but it's also one of the drawbacks because you need to know HTML and CSS and client-side templating to work with this. And then just as a side note, I mentioned placeholders, and I'm gonna run over time here. This label placeholder, the UX base label class name thing that we saw in that file, it's right here. The text that you would use is right here. So if you wanted to take that, in fact, let's just copy that here and go over here to our view box, and we'll just call it HTML and do div class equals, I think it's theme : some text. And if that's not right, we'll go figure out what it is. Yeah, some text. So see, some text has the exact same style as the viewbox one, which is a label. So you can use those placeholders to reference your classes, or reference the parts in the theme that contain classes or even images, and drop that in. And then if it changes, your custom HTML will change with it. And I think there's insert. Yes, insert. Yeah, no, insert theme CSS style does not use themes. Interesting. It should. It should let you pick a theme here. That's false. But if you're using alpha, it will actually list all those for you, and you can insert them. Your other option too also is you can use the CSS selector to insert things here. So I'm going to end the webinar. I've gone 2 minutes over. This will be posted to YouTube when the guy who does the video stuff is back. He's on vacation. Everyone's on vacation. We're all on vacation because it's summer. But we'll try to get that up to you as fast as possible. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please, go to the forum and post on forum.alphasoftware.com. You're also welcome to email guides@alphasoftware.com with questions about this presentation, or really anything that you might need help with. But we are encouraging more forum use so we can get more conversations happening with you guys. So thank you all for being here. Next week, Dion will be here. I'll be here. Dave might be here. I'm not 100% sure, but thank you for joining me today, and we'll catch you at the next webinar. Have a great day. Bye.